This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Good evening and happy Fantopia Friday. I am Erica Lukes, and I'm always happy to be here broadcasting to people from all over the world. Thank you for taking time to share 2 hours with me so I can talk to some of the best, just the most brilliant, kind researchers, people that want to share information with all of us. I am on Facebook, and you can find me at UFO Classified, or my website is ufoclassified.com. Don't forget that I have 2 lovely ladies that are following my show. So the fantastic Tina Marie is up after my show on restricted airspace, and then Solaris Blue Raven follows my show on hyperspace. I have a guest tonight, Mr. Jon Kelly, who will be joining me in a moment, and our show will be fascinating. He's one of my favorite guest, just a brilliant man. But first, I want to just share a little something with you because it's incredibly important to me, and I will try not to cry as I talk about this. I don't think that's going to happen, though, but it's with a very heavy heart that I am here tonight because this morning I learned of the passing of somebody who was incredibly important to me. Her name is Shirley, and if those of you who know me and know my personal life and some things that have happened over the past few years, then you know my fight to take on the Salt Lake City School Board because of this brave, beautiful woman. She was a lunch lady in an elementary school, and she was the best lunch lady ever. All of her kids loved her, and she knew everything about every one of them. I know that my child would come home every day and talk about her and how much she loved her. And she would, I just see her face right now, and I'm having a really hard time. But she made a big impact on them. She was 62 years old. And in 2014, a very special person, special not in the very positive way, came in from the Salt Lake City School District because they had had some delinquent accounts in all the schools all over Salt Lake. And they were sent in there to rip the lunches from little 5-year-olds' hands and throw them in the trash to teach the parents a lesson. This happened at our school, and Miss Shirley sat there with tears running down her face. And she watched as these little kids came crying to the teachers. It was mayhem. It was absolutely horrible. Most of the kids had $0 balances or $2 balances. After this happened, and I learned this happened to my child and her friends, I immediately wanted to know, so I called the district. I called the principal, who was too cowardly to talk to me. I tried to talk to the superintendent, and as I later learned, he was too busy trying to protect his own self to do what was right, and the only person that talked to me was Shirley, and she was in tears because those were her kids. And I went on the news that day because I knew something was wrong. And my news story went viral. And within 24 hours, my face and the face of the children at the school was all over the world. And the media descended on my school and Shirley and the superintendent. And The corrupt powers that be decided immediately that they needed to make a scapegoat of somebody because they were getting too much heat. We began to do some digging. I made tons of grammar requests to get documents, and I found out that there was, I believe, definitely some mishandling of a lot of things and intimidation of not just Shirley, but many other employees at the Salt Lake City School District. Shirley was framed. She was humiliated. She ended up resigning after they had two policemen from the Salt Lake City Police Department go in to school in front of everyone and take her down to the station for questioning, just to intimidate her. I spent so many hours on the phone with her, almost every day, crying, laughing. And I remember after the news broke of this story, hearing kids all across the country that were making the news. There was one little boy in particular who had made the news. He was special needs, and he had had his lunch taken away from him many times. And what Shirley went through gave others around the country a platform to speak about what was happening to them. And so no matter what she felt, no matter what she went through, she knew that she did something for the greater good of all of us. I can tell you that I don't even know. It was honestly, for a year and a half, we all held hands and we fought, and we tried to keep a spotlight on this, and we tried to expose the corrupt individuals who were responsible for doing this to her. And I am very, very sad to say that this beautiful, brave human being passed away of a stroke at 63 years old. And if I can give you any message tonight, and I know this has nothing to do with UFOs, but it's just take a stand. If something is wrong, please stand up, because there are people like Shirley in the world that need you. And it's important to everything we do on this planet. And I want you to remember a beautiful, brave lunch lady who died way too soon. So anyway, thank you for hearing that. And I'm sorry I tried to make it through. It's just been such a crappy day. But anyway, I'm really happy now that I get to talk to somebody that will make me happy, and who is my therapist, this poor guy. Last time he was my therapist too. But my very special guest tonight is an international clinician and a world-famous speech analyst who released key intelligence pertaining to the Iraq War 2 years in advance of the shock and awe strikes in Baghdad in 2003. He was a former feature producer for CBS Radio with experience in #1 rated U.S. television. His work exploring consciousness communications, the paranormal, UFO phenomena have been featured in everything from the Huffington Post to the Irish Independent, Coast to Coast AM, Fox News, Forbes. He is a brilliant, brilliant man. He is a longtime student and practitioner of classical yoga and meditation, and has successfully translated an ancient science of sound and consciousness into a contemporary international clinical practice, serving mental health professionals and the general public since 1998. He's a visual artist. He has produced series of iconic photographic artworks. He has produced, I don't think there's anything that this man can't do. He has had beautiful UFO contact experiences. He has pioneered the use of 3CCD and digital night vision technology to produce broadcast quality of recordings demonstrating this apparent bidirectional communications with otherworldly intelligences. He has a great website, and I want you all to go there and check it out. It's called newsinsideout.com. And he features titles like Marfa Reflections, UFO Mountain, UFOs and Spirituality, and UFO Canyon. He is prolific, he is intelligent, and he always teaches me something. So, Jon, welcome to the show tonight.
Hi, Erica. It's nice to speak with you again.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that very tearful introduction there. But it's just been one of those days, and I think that, I think that you would really find a lot. You would have a lot in common with Shirley, because I feel that you're somebody that is very brave and takes a stand and does great things.
I'm very sorry to hear about the passing of your friend. I thought Oliver Twist went out with the 19th century.
Well, who knows? I don't know. I mean, isn't that amazing? Isn't that sad?
Well, yeah, children in schools, meals is such a fundamental value. It would seem that that those actions were like tearing at the very fabric of society almost. The children's safety net at school is something that shouldn't be tampered with.
Yes, no, you would think, but I think it just goes to show that there's so much that goes on that we still need to take responsibility for. I always find that, most of the time people are complacent in what they do, or we can all get on the internet and complain about things, but how many people are really willing to stand up and do hard work to make a change?
Yeah, these are the times. I mean, we're here now. We're the people of today, and we're the ones who have the opportunity to do something constructive with our time. If we just let the days pass and the years pass, our time here isn't infinite, and there may be very important things that we're here to do that we need to get in touch with.
Yes, I agree. And you seem to have such a wonderful way of doing that. The experiences you've had are incredible. And I just, in your own words, share with us kind of your journey so my new listeners tonight can understand what you've done.
Well, I'm somebody who got involved in a bunch of diverse studies through the years as I was growing up. I had a lot of access to different kinds of library materials and media in the 1970s related to UFOs and paranormal phenomena and so on. I was caught up in the different crazes of the day, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Star Wars, and all of those 1970s cultural high points from Hollywood. I was very interested as a young person in the spiritual dimensions, occult, and so on, and I read many of the prominent authors, some of whom are still alive today. I had access to their works through the local libraries of the time. We grew up in a time when there was the censorship of libraries that's in place now didn't exist at that time. You know how library internet these days is constrained. Folks, there are stories that I publish on newsinsideout.com that folks will write in and say, I'm at the local library here in my county, and your site is blocked. We didn't have those kinds of censorship issues around access to materials like UFO materials, paranormal, and other kinds of alternative research. And so I was a prolific reader as a child. And at the same time, I began to have some parallel experiences. I was a childhood Sasquatch witness.
Wow.
At about 8 years old. I live in British Columbia, Canada, which is a very wild and rugged terrain. It's mountainous and covered in timber. There's a lot of resource-based industry here, traditionally like fisheries, mining, forestry. Mm-hmm. Although, some of that has changed with time. And so we have the real estate to support this kind of activity. It's a famous grounds for hunters. Hunters will fly in to British Columbia for elk and other kinds of moose and other kinds of big game experiences. So living here, I live in one of the major cities, but we're not. The wilderness is just behind the next mountain here, and the reputation of the Bigfoot and Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest is well known and widely discussed for decades. So being a resident in the area, I was exposed to Sasquatch phenomena as a child. I don't know if tonight's show is an appropriate time to discuss that story. But.
Well, you know what? I would personally love to hear that story if that's okay with you.
All right. Well, I will sum it up, and it's nice to have a story about these sort of things because the personal experience is it's an original experience. It's not like necessarily like every other tale. So I have my own story, which is as a young boy, my older brother and I were sent off to a camp in the region. I won't name the region or the area, but we were sent off to a summer camp. I think it was like a 1 or 2 week type of summer camp for kids. And it was organized by one of the major children's health, education type of institutions, a well-known global institution. And we were set against a beautiful mountain in this lush forest. It's not hard to get out in the wilderness once you leave the city. There's lots of wilderness around here. So that camp setting was lush and forested. We were in cabins, and there were counselors assigned to groups of boys. So my brother and I were in separate cabins. but the cabin group went on an overnight immersion in the forest to get the kids accustomed before we went on longer expeditions, like working stuff or whatever. So we go on this overnight with maybe 3 cabins of kids and the counselors, which are young adults. And we set up our lean-to. It's real simple. We just hike like several miles out of the main camp and set up a lean-to, put up a fire, make some hot dogs and beans or whatever for dinner, and then get our sleeping bags going, and we're all off to sleep, and that's our night. So I wake up in the middle of the night, and it's moonlit, which means the visibility is really good, like really great visibility, like almost daylight conditions or twilight conditions in the middle of the night. So I have an urge the call to nature has arisen, and so I have to march out of sight of the main camp and take care of my personal business against some bushes. And so while I stand there in that moonlit night and I survey the area around me, it's just beautiful. It's the middle of summer in British Columbia. So you're in this primordial rainforest with fern-covered floors and cedar and other coniferous trees, like towering trees. Just, like an enchanting scene out of a movie, and in this beautiful moonlit conditions. And as I survey the space around me, I turn to my right, and as I turn to my right about 90 degrees from where I'm standing, I see the face of a juvenile Sasquatch in the bush. And I see the face and I see the shoulder. And it's a juvenile. This is not some towering 800-pound, space monkey. This is a juvenile,
gosh.
A youth. And we're face to face. I mean, if I took one large stride, I would have been right there, right on top of the dude. So we're very close proximity. And so I look into the face and I look into the eyes, and the eyes are very tranquil. Like the eyes are just completely pieced out. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to evaluate when I look at the face of this being. I'm trying to say, well, is it going to attack me? Right? Is this like imminent danger being this close? But I didn't sense any of that. There was no hostility. There was no intent to do anything. It was just there, and I was there. We were there together. We were sharing the space. So I only looked at the face for a moment because I understood that wild animals can be aroused to anger if you stare at them. Mm-hmm. So I didn't stare. I turned quickly back and faced straight forwards and finished up my business. And I walked as quickly as I could away from the scene. I didn't run, but I walked as quickly as I could. I got back into my sleeping bag, and I threw the covers over my head, and I went to sleep. And in my sleep, I had a dream. And in my dream, I was sitting on the lap of what's like a grandfather Sasquatch, which was like all white fur. And there was some kind of like transmission happening. I don't understand. Like I don't have a transcript of what might have been said, but it was as if some sort of cultural immersion was happening where I was being brought into some knowledge or understanding about their community history and whatnot.
Yes, that's what I wonder too. Wow.
So there was, the essence that I was able to retain in my memory was this vibe. I'm there on the grandfather's knee, and he's like telling me the stories of his people or something, something to that effect. And so I wake up in the morning and I tell my brother what had happened the night before. Well, we're tearing down the site and getting ready to leave, and he has nothing to say to me about it. But when we get back to the main camp, he's in his cabin with the boys, and he starts saying aloud what I had told him. And this leads the counselor of his cabin to come to the cabin where I am, and comes in and this is a dude who looks like a minor 49er. I mean,
dear.
Yosemite Sam had nothing on this guy. We're talking barrel chest here. So this dude comes into the cabin, and he just went nuts. He was like, he starts saying aloud, who's been talking all this Sasquatch bullshit? I've been hiking and camping in BC for 20 years, and I've never seen any. It's all bullshit. And he goes on and on. Like this super debunking thing. And the other kids are all there in the place, right? And I'm there, and it's all happening. I'm being humiliated in front of the other boys. And this guy's, it's an unstoppable, beast, right? The guy's the size of a bulldozer compared to me. So I can't do or say anything. The guy just wants to silence me by intimidating me. And so the guy does his number, and then he leaves. And the camp goes on, and there's not another word is said. But I go to we get back to Vancouver, and my brother tells me this story. He says that this gentleman who was his counselor goes up to him when we're getting to the bus for everyone to get back to town, and he tells him a story. He says, "This is what happened. I was called to go check on the winter site. Like there's two pieces of land or two installations on the land, one for winter camping, one for summer camping. So he was called when they were tearing down and closing up for the season. He was called to go check the winter camp, and he looked on the ground at the site and he saw a pile of feces. And when he looked to the distance, he saw a two-legged furry beast walking away. So he said to my brother, he said, I really didn't mean to come down on your brother like that, give him read him the whatever, like the riot act. But he said, I was witness to the same thing. I saw what he was talking about. Your brother was telling the truth is what he told him. And he said, but the fact is, if the parents of the kids ever got word of what was going on up here, they'd never let their kids come back. So it was explained to me years later, several years ago, I went on a Bigfoot overnight here in the region with someone with a lot of experience. And he said to me, well, the institution that ran that camp actually had a policy in place to silence the witnesses. They knew about it, and the policy was to silence the witnesses, and that was the fellow was simply following an existing policy. It's not like he personally came up with that. He was doing something that, he checked the rule book, and that's what they were told to do. Oh,
my goodness.
So this is here, Vancouver, British Columbia is just so many miles. It's a literal stone's throw away. I mean, I can see the wilderness from my deck. We're just the cougars, the bears, the elk, deer, all the wildlife that's here, the wolves and the eagles that come into town. We've got lots of wildlife here. We've got even bigger wildlife situation just on the edge of town as well. There are Sasquatch in the region, and so. By circumstances, I was born here and going to school here and going to summer camp here, and that's what happened just at that age. So, as a youth, as a young small person, as a young reader, I was being exposed to the ideas through the books and the television or whatever. But I began to live the personal experiences, and the stories marched off the pages of the books and into my life. So this is just one area that I had contact with. There were many dimensions to, many interesting things happening on the planet, and with passage of time and maturity, I was able to participate in more.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, it's just you look back on, and what it sounds like it was just a very, almost a tender moment with something that was so foreign. But we've got to take a break, and I'm so happy to have Jon Kelly here tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we will see you on the other side of the break.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Where'd that shot come from?
Alpha 3 to Eagle 1, we've got company.
From Tay Publishing, codename Eagle Force, the saga begins.
I see them, Alpha 3. All units stay low and let them come.
From the eyes of a special ops officer, Joe Michael Riggy brings to life this amazing story of survival, the unknown and the unexpected.
Here they come. Hold your fire. Hold. Now.
Codename Eagle Force at TayPublishing.com.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
Gee, it's so quiet. Too quiet. Terribly quiet. Awfully quiet.
Do you have an hour to kill? Well, crank up those EVPs, spirit boxes, and walk the haunted halls of the unknown with UK's very own paranormal investigator, David Cook.
You guys ready for this?
The Ghostly Hour. Live Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern.
And now, you're mine.
Come hear first-hand accounts of some of the most famous ghost sightings, photos, and videos from around the world. Skeptics, believers, and spirits both good and bad. Welcome to the Ghostly Hour, hosted by David Cook. Live every Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Coming May 1st, 2016.
When danger is imminent, will you be prepared? Now many mobile devices can bring you critical information from local sources you trust. With the unique sound and vibration, wireless emergency alerts keep you in the know wherever you are. Learn more at ready.gov/alerts. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, for Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Want to take a ride?
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm ready, but, it's okay. It's Friday night. It is beautiful. It's storming here in Salt Lake City, and I'm with my friends and a really, really cool guy. Jon Kelly is joining me, and we are going to be talking about secret messages of the UFO experiencers. Before we went to break, though, we were talking about a very profound experience that Jon had as a child where he encountered a young Sasquatch. And Jon, how did you process that after you left camp?
Well, because I had the reading foundation, I hadn't been reading about it for that long. I was only 8 years old, but I had a foundation in reading, and so I had an immediate reference point that I wasn't. This was not a bear or some other kind of conventional wild animal, but this was one of these exotics, and that I had become one of the people who had participated in as a witness. So that's what I took from it. But as you say, what's the follow up? Did I go to school and take a degree in Sasquatchology? I mean, those things didn't exist.
Dang.
I thought I like any experiencer of the novel and the sort of the breakthrough frontier type of experience. There are not a lot of reference points.
Right.
So I was simply left to reflect on that experience, and my universe of ideas grew consequently. But through experience, I was conditioned to understand that there were diverse entities here, not just the humans, and not it wasn't just the curriculum they were teaching me at school, but the reality included a lot of exotic stuff, and there was potential for more exotic experience. And that this British Columbia, as my reading and understanding developed, I mean, the tourism board markets it as supernatural British Columbia. I mean, they're obviously tongue-in-cheek, but what are they really alluding to? It's this place has a legacy for all kinds of phenomena, like many other beautiful natural settings. And so it's become it's provided a great opportunity for my studies and for the studies of other peers who live here now in the area and in the region, some of whom Charles Lamoureux, for example, enjoys participating in the UFO phenomenon. He's a great videographer.
He is, and I have to just throw this in there because I was introduced to him because of one of your videos, your video interview with him, which is incredible. And all of you go to YouTube and find Jon Kelly and watch this video with Charles because it is exceptional.
Yeah, I've done my best to hopefully encourage and socialize with some of the folks here locally who are demonstrating an aptitude and an interest, because I believe that they represent the opportunity to explode this issue into further prominence. That the more of us who get together to work on these questions and develop data and other kinds of information, the better the quality of the result is going to be. So I've had lots of personal individual experiences where it was only me and the Sasquatch, for example, but even more fun is sharing and teamwork that can come. And so Charles being here gave me an opportunity to make a connection with another videographer, and I was really happily informed by some of his great successes. I think he has some profound results, and they leave little question in the mind of the viewer that you're watching something extraordinary. So again, this is Vancouver. We're in full spring season here, almost summer-like at this point. Lots of clear sky conditions, lots of outdoors. Everyone is, the rains have stopped, so everyone's outdoor enjoying, and this chance to look up day or night to see something. This is a peak time when it's warm at night and so on, or blue skies during the day. These are peak times when there are opportunities for sightings. So I hope to continue in my own way to encourage local people and people everywhere to take part and participate in what's the good things in their own area, the wealth of experiences that are possible. They're just beyond the chapters of our local newspaper. We have to reach a little further to find them, but they exist.
We do, and it's been interesting for me because we have several media outlets here, and one of them being a pretty conservative media outlet, and they're the ones that are airing the stories about the cattle mutilations and about the UFO sightings, or back in when Skinwalker Ranch was first thrust into the spotlight, it was one of these news reporters from a conservative paper that broke the story. So it's kind of fun to see.
Well, the mainstream does play on this topic, and more so in recent years. It's a highly rated topic. It's a guaranteed audience, has guaranteed audience attention holding powers, and so they are serving the public, and they know the public is interested in these topics, so they continue. And that's good. I think that's good use of the journalistic resources, is to present the stories that will expand knowledge and explore, get people to think differently about our situations. The idea that something impossible is happening can inform us about the breakthrough solutions to the problems of our own mundane problems.
Yes.
So I encourage and support them, their continued interest, and I also recognize that it's a guaranteed view count hit. UFO popular topic, right?
It is, and I really hope, through the great work that you do and others, it's very great to see that people are starting to take this seriously, because it is a very, very serious topic. And sometimes when I watch, there was the UFO Congress down in Phoenix, and all my friends were there, and one of them was interviewed. She's with Phoenix MUFON, and then I watched a little story from the news reporter did, and of course they're back in the studio teeing and just kind of rolling their eyes, and it's just, oh my God, at some point we'll be done with that, and they'll get over their egos or whatever they need to do, and then they can really support a very exciting time.
Well, the time we're in now is a time of transition. We're transitioning from old school dogma, superstitious concepts about reality, and moving into scientific and observational and empirical perspectives. And everyone getting on board the wagon and participating together in that journey is part of these changes, where people congregate around questions related to UFOs and ET contact at conferences and local community events. These are signs of this change, and the fact that there is conflict, there is jets versus sharks politics, groupism and cliquism coloring divisions in present society around these questions all tells us that we're in a time of transition, and in the transitional time, the pioneers will leap on the opportunity and they will blaze the trail and move far ahead in experience and knowledge of the mainstream, and eventually through trickle down and other types of economics, their influence will reach people in more in serious institutional positions. I'll tell you a story, for example, about a UFO sighting video that was shot over Vancouver Island, over Victoria, which is our provincial capital, several years ago. And a young gentleman who was very successful Vancouver Island UFO videographer, a German-Canadian family. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It may come to me. But he had a wonderful video of a very bright light over Victoria under overcast conditions, which meant there was clouds behind the object and you couldn't see anything celestial. Like there was no star visibility under those conditions. It was all overcast. Massive light. And he shot it on video, and he shot lots of video. And I ran a story for Examiner when I was writing for them. And the response came from the the conservative press was they summoned a federal scientist who lives on the island, just outside of Victoria, to debunk the story and to say that he was out the same night, looking at Jupiter through his telescope, which was impossible to do under those conditions. But why did he put his reputation, in the name of science on the line? It's entirely a political action at that point. They got a debunker out of the academic, government-paid science community to debunk a local report. It was a very foolish debunking, though, because the conditions, if the person even watched the video, they would know it was impossible to see any celestials through the thick clouds.
So that is amazing. Wow.
So there is this political. There's a political control of information. Canada, that's a provincial capital, and the island plays host to military services. So we're talking about phenomena over seats of government and military bases under those conditions. And so the response is to throw up, to throw up a straw man, right? It's like an obligatory debunking that really is irrational. But that was how they presented, and that ran in the conservative press up here in response to the story about the video. So even though we had video, really compelling video, the skeptics wouldn't even look at the evidence and would draw a conclusion that was irrational. So this goes on as well. If I'm 8 years old and I'm seeing Sasquatch, I'm getting torn a new one by Buffalo Bill. And if I'm an adult shooting UFO videos, I'm getting the government liar with a degree to stand up and say it's all nonsense. So we're never finished with that. What we're really trying to do, though, instead of not just antagonize the debunkers, is really try to reach the people who are positioned in their lives to take steps forward based on access to this information. If only I knew. Maybe people would make different choices, and maybe people play important roles, or they would emerge from the population. They would play important roles in discovery and education around these questions to help the rest of us understand what's going on. That's my real hope. I see in the grassroots, there are people who are going to be the future leaders are going to come from the grassroots, and those people, if they are, the sooner they are initiated into these questions, the sooner they'll get active and show some leadership.
Yes, and that's incredibly important, especially right now, because we're seeing so many people that were active in this and real pioneers, and they're getting older, and we're losing some of them. And now we need to really find people that are intelligent, who have had their own experiences, I believe, and who have one foot on the ground so they can really carry this forward, because that's important. I think sometimes you can have so many experiences and it's just too overwhelming for you, and then you go out there way on the other side and there has to be somebody that can find a balance. It's a tough thing to do.
Well, it's the marriage of worlds. Heaven and earth can join under special conditions. Who can maintain the rainbow bridge between the worlds? That's the shaman's domain, right? The medicine person. So it takes a special personality to facilitate on behalf of the other members of society. And those facilitator roles may have been recognized in indigenous cultures in ways that our Western, Cartesian, materialist type of rationale, our post-Renaissance perspective, that may not be inclusive. I guess the scientist has become the high priest. But how many of them can, give you access to the Rainbow Bridge? I don't know.
No, and that to me is frightening. in a lot of respects, because I think that, and I think that science is incredibly important, and I think that we've done so much, and we're blessed to have that. But I think that sometimes with that science, we lose so much. I mean, we need to find a balance between accepting the intuitive part of our being and communing with nature and, just respecting the earth. I know this sounds a little hippie-esque, but it's true. We lose so much when we're always trying to put things in a box.
Well, I would never, accuse you of dreaming on moonbeams or anything like that.
Well, thank you. I think
moonbeams. But, I want to say that, these questions come up. The UFO contact experience raises questions about the environment. It raises the questions about shared responsibilities and stewardship that are not necessarily inclusive in some of the major initiatives of our society. Here in British Columbia, we face a lot of gas pipeline initiatives that are corporate and government sponsored, but the public has protested loudly against. And there are implications for environmental disasters due to if they move those kinds of projects through here. Now, gas and oil the market value has dropped tremendously in the last year, so the prospective profits from moving all of that material across our province, it doesn't seem to be as profitable as it once appeared to be. In other words, they may have lost all their steam, but we are constantly challenged in a big way. I don't think anybody, the community where I live in the city is just down the street from one of these proposed projects. I wouldn't be very happy if the streets were running in oil because, some Fukushima engineer didn't know how to run the machinery. I mean, It's not like that ever happens in industry, right? So,
ooh, did you just hear that big thunderclap? Sorry about that.
Was that storming from your side?
I know. See, it's a sign from somebody.
Oh yeah. The earth is shaking. So I say there are powerful stakeholders around the planet who have a connection with the natural resources here and how the humans are doing, in working with the environment for success. And part of that success means like renewability and sustainability and all those other questions, not like tragic destruction that lasts 50,000 years, because someone pulled, they thought the lever was a ham sandwich or something. I mean, oh, God. People are making mistakes all the time. We are fallible. I'm sorry to say it. In 21st century human beings are fallible, and
it isn't so. And we're not the center of the universe. Come on.
Yeah, what we're doing may not be the number one event, and figuring out what that is, may force us to go out and to look into nature and to spend more time considering. Someone published an article recently about how 99.99% of the species that live on the planet are estimated to be undiscovered. That science has only accounted for 1+ million of anticipated 100 million species. So there's all this life here that we know that our mainstream thinkers know nothing about, and they admit that.
Yes, and that's such a great point. I mean, we know nothing about our own planet. So when people always make fun of the UFO thing or the Sasquatch thing, I mean, I just sit back with just scratching my head because we know nothing. And why are we so egotistical to think that we do?
So with good fortune, by graceful circumstances, we are invited into mystery by events. We suddenly find ourselves with the Sasquatch in the forest. We suddenly find ourselves with the UFO on the mountain, and then the learning begins. Then our education is happening. It's by circumstances. The longer we spend on this planet, the more of these kinds of experiences are going to happen. It seems inevitable. And for some of us, a lot of those experiences happen all in one lifetime. Their life is just rich in those otherworldly types of affairs.
So before we go to break, we're going to go to our break, and then we want to definitely go into what you would like to talk about with the experiencers and all of this. I'm so excited to talk about this, but I want to, after your Sasquatch sighting, where did that go, and when did you have another experience? How quickly after?
Well, life went on, sort of normal life, and there were a variety of different experiences. My spiritual biography would be very long, telling, but I think that pertaining to this show, the next experience of interest was, the next experience of interest, I'll say I guess there are two stories that are worth telling. One is that I was an active sleepwalker around that time of my life when I was a child, around 8 or 9, and my family acquired a house in Vancouver when I was 10, and I was still sleepwalking from time to time. So when we acquired the family home in the early time, after we had moved in early, in the early time when we just setting up house, I had a bedroom on the second floor, and my parents and my brother's bedroom were all on the second floor. So I had left my bedroom and I was wandering the hall, and I was talking aloud, and I stood at the top of the stairs, outside of my parents' bedroom door, and I was calling aloud. And my father woke up from the sound of my voice, and he told the story that I was reciting an exorcism in the Catholic tradition, but it was an archaic rendering of the Catholic exorcism.
Oh, Lord Almighty!
He had, I guess, had been an altar boy or something in the Catholic Church, so he recognized that I was speaking seemingly in Latin, and he said that he was able to reference some of what he recalled later. He found some text that he was able to reference. He said it was like I had pronounced some archaic language, not that it was Latin, but it was it wasn't the 20th century version of that rite. So there I was sleepwalking and calling aloud, and I was calling aloud to a person. I was saying to a person, I was saying, "Get out of this house. It's our house now," and so on. And saying this exorcism recital. And so my father alerts me to the fact that I'm sleepwalking, and somehow I sort of, I semi-wake up and go back to my bed or whatever. But he explained to me when we reviewed this story maybe 7 or 8 years ago, before he passed away, and he said the fact of the matter was that when we acquired the house, and he didn't tell the children at the time, but when we acquired the house, the previous owner had passed in the house.
Oh, interesting.
So it was as if, as a child, I had picked up on the psychic presence of the previous owner.
How did your father respond to that at the time?
Well, I guess he thought it was kind of amazing, but he didn't make a big deal about it. Over time, though, he kept feeding me these books from the library and other sources, all this metaphysical occult type of information. He supported my inquiry into those questions because he became aware that my life would somehow, through his observation of these events, that my life would somehow be related to these questions.
And isn't that a wonderful thing? I mean, what a gift for your dad to be supportive like that, because there's so many people that would turn a blind eye or even ridicule their children.
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with my father was not perfect by any means, but it touched him in a way that he felt he could support my interest. And I was, as I said, I was privileged to have access to these ideas and information. There was lots of resources made available to me.
When did you see your first UFO?
I had my first practical experience, eyes open, when I was 16.
Are you going to write a book about your life?
I have so much duty and responsibility to get all this information, as you say, published in these different forms. I am definitely, I am constantly squeezing the juice out of every one of these areas so that I can successfully publish. I have not written a book. Currently, I'm involved in video production, but out of that, there's a lot of screenwriting and whatnot. So, yeah, books are also a practical outcome. I have stories that are worth telling. So,
you do. And that I think it's important to share those. I know with your busy schedule, but to hear all of this and then to look back for others who have experienced things. I mean, this has been something that most people have experienced since they were children. And it's wonderful to hear your experiences, because I think it gives people a sense of safety and hope, and that's really a great thing.
Yeah, if through my telling that others find some peace of mind concerning events in their own lives, and that's the benefit. Just by I'm representing that I'm somebody who's had these experiences, that I'm telling the truth when I say these things, and the good news is I have lots of instrumental evidence from later in my life to support the gist of what I'm saying, that these things are happening and they're empirical. There's not imagination.
No, and you've been very diligent about the way you have researched this, gone out into the field, and like I have said many times, and not just when you're on the show, I talk about you because I look at your body of work and I see the videos, and I just listen to you talk and interview people, and we can all learn so much from you. And that's a great thing.
So, I appreciate your support.
And you're my therapist, too.
On the side. Shh, that was our
we're not
secret,
my
Erica. You
producer.
weren't supposed to tell.
Luckily, Tina's here tonight for that.
Are we offline yet? Or what?
No, we're not off. Yeah, well, well, I'll wait to Scary till we, take our little break. But it is, it's last time I just have to tell all you guys, if you haven't heard my last show with Jon, I was taking a break and finding a new station, and I was doing it on, oh Lord, Blog Talk Radio. And for the first half an hour, I was having this great conversation with Jon, and it wasn't broadcasting. And Jon, you were so patient with me. You're just like, oh, okay.
I guess I had seen your previous work. I had faith in you that you would prevail. And
you're so nice. Thank you so much. So I can hear that music. So we're going to take a quick break, and the best is yet to come because we're going to talk about secret messages of the UFO experiencers with Jon Kelly when we get back on UFO Classified.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows, visit her website at UFOclassified.com. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everybody, and happy Friday. I am Erica Lukes, and you can find me on Facebook at UFO Classified. Make sure you send me messages, especially if you have an orange orb sighting. You know how much I love to research that. You can always get my archives. I have a YouTube channel, find that, and lots of great interviews there that I did last year at Contact in the Desert. I had a great time. Kind of sad I'm not going this year, but I've got fun things on the horizon, so I will keep you updated on that. Tonight, my friend, just this really, I have so much fun. We're having a great time off the air. Tina and I were saying some pretty exciting things, and poor Jon was just sitting there going, oy vey, I'm sure. But Jon Kelly is an international clinician. He's a world-famous speech analyst. He is somebody that really pushes buttons. He's very controversial, but he is smart, and we can learn so much from him. He has a great website that you need to check out. It's called newsinsideout.com, and they feature brilliant stories. They have titles about Marfa Reflections, UFO Mountain, UFO Canyon, which is absolutely beautiful. And Jon, tell us a little teeny bit about UFO Canyon.
UFO Canyon is one of my favorite research locations in British Columbia. As I mentioned, we're just like a vast piece of land with all kinds of interesting nooks and crannies. So this site is in our Okanagan region, which is famed for its lake monster Ogopogo, amongst many other things. And it's also known as a UFO sighting area. There's many reports. Okanagan puts us over the same near desert land that is, covers the eastern part of Washington and Oregon, up into Idaho, that kind of steppe, hot, dry climate. So the canyon is in near desert conditions. In the summer, there's rattlesnake and other kinds of critters, desert climate critters up there. We had a lot of opportunities to shoot night vision up in the secluded, beautiful crystal clear sky location. The federal government has a radio astronomy installation up in the area, but the skies themselves, just visible light is razor sharp. It's desert skies, so razor sharp skies. And we shot a lot of UFOs, including lots of video of communications, a lot of psychic communications that happen at that site. And there are luminous phenomena in the canyon that we filmed appearing below the canyon walls behind them. We know they're in the canyon, luminous entities popping in while we're out there in the night sky watching.
And I have watched that, and it is so beautiful. I can't believe that you have the footage you do.
Well, I picked very well when I bought my equipment. I bought a broadcast grade video camera, which had some extra technologies in it to help with the picture and sound and so on. So I bought very wisely, but I worked in the tech industry in the 1990s, and so I spent a lot of time when I wasn't designing systems and servers. I was reading engineering papers on 3CCD imaging, and so when it came time to acquire a video camera, I knew this 3CCD redundancy and color accuracy would be the best that I would be able to provide for my shots, and that worked out really well. The Panasonic AG DVC30 has been my camcorder of choice, and I've got like 1,500, maybe close to 2,000 hours on that thing now. I've run a lot of hours through that machine, and it's still running great. It was built like a tank, and it produces beautiful shots.
Oh, it does. I absolutely agree. We have some questions in the chat room for you, and Bill, one of my favorite people, is in there, Bill Forte. He wants to know what you feel the connection is between UFOs and spirituality.
Well, I'm glad to hear from Bill. I know he's one of the people making things happen in the Skywatch and broadcasting arena. And the spirituality, I think, is something that is awakened through the practice. I think there's an opportunity for the Skywatcher and the contactee experiencer to have perceptions of other states of consciousness, including telepathy and other types of phenomena, leading the mind to imagining the world as a different place, and that our potential, our human potential, is much different than our simple material or physical potential, but that the mind itself has powerful mountain scaling potentials that can be awakened, and in these high energy moments of interaction with others, ostensible civilizations, that can manifest, that can erupt from within the people. So I see it as something that happens on the journey. It doesn't have to happen on the journey, but if we live in a universe populated by all these entities, the 99.9% that science hasn't accounted for just on this planet, then it seems to me that the expansion of consciousness is one of the inevitable outcomes of these contacts. When we learn something new in science, when we find a new squid, down in the Mariana Trench,
yes, our
consciousness is expanding at that time. It's just the kind of expansion that happens in the spiritual realm is like vaster and of intense magnitude, not just a sort of an arithmetic addition of one extra piece of information, but rather a piece of information that serves as sort of a key in a lock system that unlocks an entire network of information.
Oh, that's interesting. You've been doing some research on secret messages of UFO experiencers.
Yes.
Let's get into that, because you've also got some clips you want to play, but just just take us there.
Okay, so in the late 1990s, I became aware of a procedure that allowed people to decrypt unconscious communications residing within the human voice. And I saw its applications in therapy and as a means of reinvigorating talking therapy in a more exponentially quicker approach to trauma identification resolution. And so I took a course of study in Southern California, became very prominent. All my media experience was based on my professional practice and demonstrated abilities in this area. And it's a very simple procedure that involves using a mirror filter to reflect speech signals, communications. If we make a recording of today's conversation, we can filter it on an audio workstation in a way that the graph of the signals is mirrored or flipped across the y-axis. And when we monitor that reflected graph, we hear additional messages and communications. And those messages can then be vetted for factuality and truth. If we can go to the sources, for example, and ask them, what does this mean? You know, if we tell you something about this issue, do you have something to say about it? Yes or no? Or we can just wait with the passage of time, and time itself can vet the factuality of our claims. So I spent a number of years and became very prominent covering mainstream news from this interesting perspective and fleshing out stories with information that was not published anywhere. So this became a very interesting avenue to learning about the world, ourselves, and all kinds of things. And I applied this method as a therapist. And according to the psychologists and psychiatrists who've reviewed my practice, they say I do it very well. So what I'd like to do is sort of, for the audience who are unfamiliar with this idea, just to establish the premise, we'll take a look at some of the coverage of the stories that I was looking at maybe 15 or 16 years ago. For example, the inauguration of President George W. Bush gave us this clip here.
And to all nations, we will speak for the values that gave our nation birth.
That's the president's inaugural address in January 2001. And when I mirror the audio or reflect it or reverse it, I hear the words Mission of Baghdad.
Mission of Baghdad. Mission of Baghdad. Mission of Baghdad.
And so the inaugural address was rich in information about future historic global events, that the mission of Baghdad would be primary in the Iraq War. Kirby Caldwell, the pastor who gave the benediction after the president, said this:
"Deliver us from these and all other evils, and cast our sins into your sea of forgetfulness."
And in reverse, the words say missile attack.
Missile attack. Missile attack. Missile attack.
And thereby, with these two pieces of information, I have the shock and awe strikes on Baghdad that marked the beginning of the Iraq War. The shock and awe strikes were a phalanx of cruise missiles fired on Baghdad and all the command and control centers. That was the Iraq War. But this is January 2001, and I'm describing with military-grade precision facts of the Iraq War. Baghdad is a geographic location, and missile strikes are a military strategy. I had that information in January 2001. I reported it widely. And so was there, what surprise occurred in everyone's mind when it turned out that I had been telling the truth about these matters and that I had derived them in such an obscure way, using a mirror to reflect speech signals? I mean, yeah. That's not something we were taught in grade school.
Wow.
So when I make claims about the UFO contactees and their messages, it's predicated on a long track record for accurately identifying and interpreting what's going on. Let's take a couple more stories just again to reinforce this idea that actual, real, usable information can be obtained through this method. This is a serial killer case that I covered in Wichita, Kansas, BTK killer. I appeared on morning radio 15 minutes before his hearing to pronounce, what I had detected from a television interview he gave. This fellow was under suspicion of those crimes from the local county jail.
So now that party is going to be subpoenaed in, or has been subpoenaed in. I cannot talk to that party. They can't come here for visits.
And so when I reflected the signal, I heard him say the words, "The demons influenced that guy." And so this was a very obscure piece of evidence in the case, was that the known killer had written letters to local journalists and police in Wichita describing the scenes of the crimes. And the police could tell that it was the real killer because only a person on the scene of the crime could write those details. And one of the details that was written into those letters related to demonic possession. So I had the suspect pronouncing demonic possession ideas, and I had the known killer in writing talking about demonic possession, and I said, seems highly suspicious that Dennis Rader's talking about demonic possession. So Rader goes to the hearing 15 minutes after I appear on morning radio in that town, and he confesses to all the BTK crimes at the hearing, at the pretrial hearing. Now, I'm not saying that my morning show broadcast had anything to do with his confession, but the fact is that my report favored him as the killer prior to his confession. And furthermore, after he'd been sentenced, and he's now serving a very long sentence, he was again interviewed by local television news, and he specifically validated my claim because he says he feels like he's possessed by a demon.
I just know it's the dark side of me that it controls me. I personally think it's not personally. I actually think it's demons.
There you go. From thousands of miles distance, using only the speech signal, I was able to decrypt that, and the speaker himself later validated my findings. He said, I feel like I'm possessed by demons. Well, I already knew that before he confessed. I knew that there was a strange parallel between him and the killer. And that was, again, showing through demonstration that the information produced through this form of assessment is reliable information. This is not speculative, throw anything against the wall to see what sticks. This is precision. That's forensic grade precision. I ID'd the killer based on his occult, evidence. I mean, that's bizarre type of evidence to find, but nonetheless, I did ID the killer, and he confessed. He said he basically repeated what I had said. Let's go ahead further to Russian spies in North American soil. Anna Chapman, who became a notorious celebrity now in Russia after she was thrown out of the U.S. along with her crew of Russian spies who were trying to influence U.S. government and industry at the time. She appeared at a job fair in New York where they've interviewed all the candidates. Job fair, you go with your resume and you sit down, you talk to the potential employers and tell your life story and
yes.
And whatnot. So there she is. They're just videotaping it, but she's a spy, so she's undercover. She's pretending she's a job hunter. Let's listen to this job hunter interview.
Be scared, do it anyway. And not only that, you have a lot of people that got a long way to success, and you have many people that are thinking about doing this, going this way, this direction. So it's very important to bring these two parts together when someone can see that this can happen, and inspire them to go forward with their ideas.
All right, so this is my sample. The video's online. I say, well, let's do a little espionage research here. What's going on? What's the counter-espionage, solution? Maybe it's this analysis. I hear her say the words, let's pull a Vegas drop with Tim. Well, something like 9 or 11 months later, the Wall Street Journal, after my report is published, the Wall Street Journal names Tim Foley as the 19-year-old accomplice of Russian spy Anna Chapman. So with give me a break. I mean, I don't really have an inside line into all these massive intelligence services that are now employing hundreds of thousands of people. But I don't know how many of their analysts are performing at this level. But it seems to me we scored 100%. We got the name of the accomplice out of the spy's testimony, and the spy is, they're undercover. It's all a facade, but the unconscious is pushing this information to the surface. And if we're patient enough to listen, that was vetted. Those timestamps are on the servers where they're published. The Wall Street Journal's timestamp is published on their server, and my blog hosting company has their timestamp published on their server. I can't change the timestamps. I beat the Wall Street Journal. How did I do it? I used this very obscure methodology, but it's so reliable that, I can do this in public. I gave these demonstrations, and these are, over a number of years. These are I didn't just cook these up overnight special for our show. I'm reflecting on the history of my work, and I'm saying that there's a track record for incredible accuracy of military and forensic and medical grade that has made this work very reliable in the minds of the professional and licensed therapists who've evaluated it. They say, this is really good. This is the kind of thing that's helping people, and it's not just speculative. This isn't the abstract. We're not just fancying that they say these things. That Tim Foley was the accomplice. It was Tim Foley. She said Tim. I think everybody heard Tim. Did you hear him say Tim?
I did.
It's unambiguous. This is going on. So why don't we turn the tables now on the UFO testimony and UFO witness situation, where we feel, there's all kinds of information that we're just not getting. Just like Dr. Hynek, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, considered by many as the father of ufology, who was the federal government's UFO scientist and astronomer connected to Project Blue Book in the 1960s. Project Blue Book, which he later denounced, saying that they demonstrated no innovation in new methodologies through their study. The study was not an incubation place for new scientific methods. He said they were just warehousing information and shutting down claims of UFO reports. It was a debunking effort. This Dr. Hynek wrote this in one of his books. He was formally connected with the project, but he said, my final assessment was this wasn't science. This was a political ploy to try to silence discourse on this topic. He said, and he specified, he said that witness testimony was one of the areas that Blue Book did not develop any research in or any new methods. And to him as a scientist, that wasn't science. If you weren't, there was no innovation, there was no science. So I'm responding to Dr. Hynek now. I read about and of Dr. Hynek as a boy, and now as an adult, I'm responding to Dr. Hynek's the legacy scientist, saying, I can provide forensic, military, intelligence grade, medical grade intelligence derived from the testimony, the spoken testimony. It can be enough. And we can start to penetrate into the mystery of the UFO contact with many high-profile and obscure cases. Let's go to examples now from some of our UFO contactees. President Carter, we'll go through quickly now. President Carter talking about UFOs on network television.
Well, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. And when I was back as a peanut farmer...
It's a famous story. President Carter was a witness to a UFO. He filed a report, I believe, with MUFON.
Did he? I didn't know that he filed it with MUFON.
Maybe I'm mistaken. It was one of the reporting centers that was active at the time in the early 70s. And I would have to recheck that. I may be mistaken, but it was...
I'll do some checking too. That's interesting.
It's a well-known case, and there is a report on file, and it's available. You can find it online. So with President Carter as our witness, let's move forward. He's given us our testimony. There's no photos. There's no videos, right? There's no pieces of the UFO engine that we can examine. What have we got? We got testimony. But is there more to it? Yes, there is. My findings say, the president stated, saucer went out naked. Going out, they'll put it in him. And when I listen to that, I feel like I'm listening to the sleep-talking utterances of somebody who's getting inside of a flying saucer for some kind of medical examination, or have something inserted in their body, like all of the many abduction claims that talk about implants and other things like that. I hear the president talking as if he was one of the people who had endured one of those encounters, as if he was. He says, being naked, being on the saucer, putting things in him. I mean, it really portrays the president not only as a close encounter of the first kind type of witness, but someone who's got a deeper connection. In Dr. Hynek's system is that CE4. He got on board the ship.
Wow. And then that's fascinating. I mean, President Carter's sighting, I just have to say, and there have been many presidents who have had sightings. Have you analyzed all of them?
I have not analyzed all of them, but I am aware that President Reagan had claims.
Yes.
People around President Reagan had claims about air flights where they saw flying objects. And President Reagan's family, Nancy Reagan, was very sensitive to spiritual and psychic issues. She's well known for consulting astrologers.
Yes, she was.
So, I think it's within the domain of people's experiences. But being a world leader, maybe there may be political consequences at the same time, to being too relaxed about these kinds of questions. In other words, their position, while it enables them to maybe have the experience, it may also silence them. They may have to live in silence with that as well.
That is very true. And I just, it was the International UFO Bureau where President Carter reported it. Thank you, Tina, for looking that up. And that is interesting. I've heard him talk about that before. I've seen the video of him talking about that. It's amazing. Before we go to break, because we've got to go out in 2 minutes, I just want to ask you if you think there was a hidden message by President Barack Obama when he spoke about aliens in his speech, or any other famous contactees, eyewitnesses, or whistleblowers.
President Obama had something in his inaugural address that I published. I don't have the clip loaded. But, I came out was it in 2009 when he first got to office? I came out with something to say about this will be in his term there will be something major, because his just like the war, you see, the Iraq War was in the president's inaugural prior to him, President Bush. And so 8 or 9 years later, he appears, and I say, there was a message about UFOs. I said there's something about UFOs during Obama's term. And it turned out, at a minimum, I became much more involved with UFOs during Obama's term.
Wow, that is true. So we're going to take a quick break, our last break of the night. I'm Erica Lukes with Jon Kelly. We'll be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
3 guys, no ties.
All across the country, I'm going to tell you what I really think of Donald Trump. This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies.
After Cruz had quit the campaign, he and Trump have teamed up. What?
We are talking to Ted Cruz, who's a friend of mine and a good guy.
3 guys, no ties. Wednesday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific. Right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Thursday nights are about to get weird on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Join hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz as they go exploring the bizarre. Jet across the cosmos with 2 of the most electrifying paranormal researchers in the known universe. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Exploring the bizarre takes you deep within the world of the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost world, cryptozoology. It's time to take back the night with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. Exploring the bizarre. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Only on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Alien Deceptions, a suspenseful sci-fi romance thriller by Tina Marie, featuring the tantalizing Erica Jones and the mysterious Russell Hamilton. An out-of-this-world book of fiction based on years of document facts and files the government does not want you to know about. At least, not yet. Alien Deceptions by Tina Marie. Available now at Amazon.com or get a signed copy at TinaMarieEntertainment.com. Get your copy now.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Want to take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, my friends. It's good to see the chat room alive with some of my great people that follow me and support me. Bill, American Road Warrior, Jeff, Susan. Thank you so much for always supporting me. It really means a lot. And I think if we support each other in the work that we're all trying to do, we are going to accomplish great things in this field. I have next week, I just want to talk about the fact Alejandro Rojas is going to be joining me. I have a great time with Alejandro, and I think that I know that he does amazing work, and I'm really happy to be his friend and to have him on and hear about some of his personal experiences, some of his favorite cases. So Alejandro next week, spread the word on that one. Tonight, I'm having a great conversation. I knew this has just exceeded my expectations, even though I knew it was going to be fantastic. I'm here with Jon Kelly, who is a brilliant, brilliant man. He writes for News Inside Out. That is his baby. He's a beautiful photographer, videographer, a very spiritual man, a UFO contactee, and somebody we can learn from. He also is a famous speech analyst, and we've been listening to some of his work. So, Jon, let's get back into the secret messages of UFO experiencers.
Well, as I said, I brought with me tonight some high-profile cases and some obscure cases for us to evaluate the claims that the testimony of the UFO witness can be mined for further unconscious utterances if we use a digital mirror to reflect the signal, the voice signal. If we play it in reverse or we reflect the waveform, the unconscious will speak to us. And it seems there are some speech signals coming up. There are some messages coming from some of our speakers, including President Jimmy Carter. Let's move forward to another high-profile case, Rendlesham in the UK. Very famous encounter with a military base personnel going out into the forest. There's missing time in this case. There's a lot of continued debate. I mean, this entire conferences and interest groups that just focus on the Rendlesham case itself. Very popular story from the 1980s. Colonel Charles Halt, one of the living witnesses, still around, still on the circuit, talking about his experience and what happened to his personnel. Here's one of his interviews discussing the case. Excuse me. No, this is Charles Halt's live tape from the scene of the event where he was wandering with his people in the field. And he had a tape recorder with him. So this is actually the live field recording.
Farmers house across in the next field. Now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash.
So as I said, that he himself, in the most recent article in the UK papers that I saw, says the man experienced 40 minutes of missing time in the forest. What happened during the 40 minutes? There's a secret message in the tape itself that I published, and I hear him say the words, feel angry, shame in this bleeping saucer.
21 believes in the saucer. 21 believes in the saucer. 21 believes in the saucer.
And so, like President Carter before him as a witness, it appears that Colonel Halt is talking about people in a saucer as if there was a abduction element to the Rendlesham case, which is not a reported dimension of the testimony. There's a large volume of spoken and other kinds of evidence around this case. That's not one of them. But they had 40 minutes of missing time, and this unconscious message appears. It speaks to me of something of that nature occurring. Now, Nick Pope, very famous former Ministry of Defense personnel in the UK, took this information when I first published it. He took it to Colonel Halt to ask for feedback, and he reported back that the Colonel didn't have anything to say. There was no comment from the Colonel on this finding. But Nick Pope was very well known in ufology circles, thought enough of this change of course, in the story. This is a retelling, right? A retelling of the narrative.
Yes, it is. Yes.
He thought there was enough to take note of it, and I say there's reason to believe. There's reason to believe that the witness who appears, the CE1, or the witness who appears as someone who had a distant experience, may qualify as someone who had a more intimate personal encounter, even involving being in a saucer, as I heard articulated here. We were talking during the break about many of the lore and legacy in United States history, 20th century history, the famous presidents and their different testimony and encounters. President Eisenhower is one of the figures that we cited, who's famed for potential ET treaties and other kinds of things that happened during his time as the president in the 1950s. And a state legislator on the day of his retirement gave an informal interview on camera, informal on-camera statement about President Eisenhower in recent years. A fellow named Henry McElroy, you may remember this story, from New Hampshire, he passed a comment on camera at the time of his retirement about President Eisenhower and the ETs.
And it informed President Eisenhower of the continued presence of extraterrestrial beings here in the United States of America.
Level's kind of low on this. I'll just crank that up a bit more. He said he found a memo. He said for some reason he was around the president or the president's offices and saw this memo pertaining to an invitation to meet with ET representatives. This is his claim. And so it was quite an interesting statement. The reflection of that statement informs me of the words, the alien, the grays.
The alien, the gray. The alien, the gray. The alien, the gray.
And this is it's a very oddball recording, so it's not a super rich sound, but I hope people can hear what I'm describing.
Yes, yeah.
In as much as we've now taken a step beyond the spoken word testimony. We've evolved the narrative. Now we have gray aliens and President Eisenhower in the testimony of Henry McElroy. I think it's fascinating. I think that Henry McElroy had some contact with that document, because to formulate such an expression in such an involuntary way, I think it could only be forged, the kind of steel that would take to communicate in such a way would only be forged under real life conditions, not through fantasy or other, imagination. That Henry McElroy was quite possibly telling the truth about this matter, about President Eisenhower. What other topics we had talked about during the break? There was we were talking about Tina Marie's proximity to Area 51 and her insights into matters and affairs and the news from the base and so on. And so I had a story that I brought with me tonight, which I thought was fascinating, from the region, that it involves S4 and a claimed security contractor who is supposedly a former SEAL who worked on site. And he told Wendell Stevens that he was on the run for his life, that he had left the base, he left his mission or something, and that Colonel Wendell Stevens was someone he needed to connect with over the UFO issue because his job had been guarding UFOs. And Wendell Stevens gets him on camera to give a very long interview. And this has been covered. This is widely known in the UFO blogosphere. The Ryan O'Connor testimony, S4 testimony,
yes,
is a well-known story, and I thought it was a great opportunity to evaluate somebody's claims. Are they telling the truth? And if so, what could they tell us further? Well, here is what he said on camera with Wendell Stevens.
Well, we'd ride to Nellis, and in Nellis we'd ride for about another hour, stop for about 20 minutes.
And then this is talking about being on furlough. That the security team they had shift work, and that teams would go on breaks. They'd go into Vegas on breaks on a bus or something like some means of transport that would ferry them back and forth between the base and Vegas. So he's talking about the return trip from the break, going back to the base, and the message states, the ride ended up with their deep sign.
The ride ended up with their deep sign. The ride ended up with their deep sign. The ride ended up with their deep sign.
I find this highly psychological, as if there was some process happening. Like, let's say, let's just sort of throw caution to the wind and say that there's ETs living at S4 in an underground base, and there's some kind of, under some kind of diplomacy, but with military personnel. And there's something about the presence of the ETs is triggering a psychic response in as much as the term sign here means archetype. It means I'm accessing some psychic process through my physical proximity to these entities. It was striking to me. You see, this is a witness who's ostensibly like, sort of an athlete, tough guy, secret mission type of, shooter, precision shooter, probably all-round Rambo type of personality, talking about deep psychological, myth and archetype. I mean, it seems highly unlikely that this type of personality who would be drawn to that lifestyle would also be informing us about archetypes. But if involuntarily, as I said, if the ET presence is stimulating the psychic potential of the humans, then this would fit. That the workplace, one of the conditions of the workplace, working around ETs, was it affected the minds of the personnel. It impacts the minds of the personnel. It awakens something within them. I think this is a very interesting perspective, and I think these are all potentially narrative or game-changing ideas that are not being introduced through other venues, unless we're waiting for our uber ultimate insider witness to step forward, and give their final on-camera deathbed testimony.
Right.
That's going on too. But for if our plan doesn't involve sitting around waiting for that to happen, we can revisit the existing libraries of testimony, and there's plenty of it. There's plenty of testimony out there. Some of the leading ufologists, like Dr. Leo Sprinkle, would conduct hypnotic regressions with the witnesses and record those. And so there are parts of the Leo Sprinkle archive that are out there that were very helpful in my research, looking at some of the legacy cases from the 60s and 70s. If we go back to one of the famous abduction cases, for example, involves Betty and Barney Hill, which is the story that put alien abduction on the map of popular culture, where their story is that they're driving from a visit to Canada south through New York in the 1960s, and that they have an interrupted journey where a UFO follows them, and then they encounter the extraterrestrials who take them on board for all these procedures. It's a very famous story. It put the story on the map. It was a book and then a TV movie. Let's listen to Dr. Leo Sprinkle's hypnotic regression tape. I'm sorry. I do have those, but I do have the regression tapes. What I have here is Betty Hill. Betty Hill in an interview from the 1990s. So here she is, Betty Hill.
Yes, Barney did in World War II. He knew planes, and he's trying to identify this. And it's flying in a very erratic manner, which was very puzzling to us. But this is 61. We'd heard UFO. Well, actually, in those days, they called them flying saucers. We had no idea what a flying saucer looked like, but we had no fear, just curiosity. We were trying to identify this craft.
All right, so there she is, and bravely, for years, she went on the conference and tour circuit and spoke to people and told her story. But my perception from listening to this piece of audio was that she suffered a certain amount of discomfort. Every time she had to remember what had happened, it was not, it was not easy for her.
No, it wasn't. She was a brave woman.
Absolutely. So here, by her willingness to come forwards and represent her case to the public, it created space for other people to tell their stories. Her great courage, is remarkable. What I hear her say here is the words, "The saucer, I'll block it."
The saucer, I'll block it. The saucer, I'll block it. The saucer, I'll block it.
Well, to block is to obstruct, like to block a memory, for example, or to block the feelings. So you see, that the presence of the saucer in this case, again, is creating some kind of stress for the people around the phenomena or around the entities, and that they are responding to those stressors. When they're near the ETs, there's something is occurring in their consciousness. Some archetype is being awakened. When they're near the flying saucer, it brings up all kinds of memories or feelings, and they are adjusting or adapting to those circumstances. If there were no feelings coming up, there'd be nothing to block. If there was nothing, there was no issue. If there was no saucer, you see, if it was all fiction, well, those feelings there would be no discomfort whatsoever, right? It's just a fictional abstract. But that's not the case. She's telling us that this impacted her, and she's telling us in a way that's so involuntary it could not be contrived. It could not be contrived. She was telling the truth, and she bravely endured, it seems, significant discomfort in doing so.
Absolutely. And I talked to even Kathleen Martin, who's been so wonderful, and to hear what Betty and Barney had to deal with, from Kathleen and people. It's just, God, we're so fortunate that we have people like that to look back on.
I think this is, my appreciation has grown through this study. There's no doubt. And, like everybody else, I was exposed to the literature and the ideas, but my appreciation deepened when I had a chance to look at the material in this way.
Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, go ahead.
Well, there's lots more stories to tell, and only so little time. So let's go to another famous 70s case that I remember seeing in the papers when I was a boy. And this is Pascagoula, Mississippi, and Charles Hickson. There's a couple of gentlemen who were fishing on the river, and they have a daylight contact abduction experience, and they are reserved gentlemen. They don't want to publish their story. But they want to contact authorities and give their testimony. And I believe this is where Leo Sprinkle was involved in this case as well. He went on site, and I believe this is from his archive. So let's listen to this witness. He tells some of the post-contact events when he goes to the sheriff, and this is what happens.
But we talked it over again and decided we would call the sheriff's department, and Sheriff Fred Diamond told us to come on over there, that we'd talk about it. So we stayed there for several hours talking with them and them questioning us. And the sheriff promised me that it wouldn't any news media know anything about it, that he would try to get it to the proper authorities, if he could find out who the proper authorities was, and have it investigated.
All right, so he says there's no news media. He's not a publicity seeker. He's trying to speak to the sheriff in confidence, but someone in the sheriff's office leaks the story, and then the press became a media feeding frenzy, just like what you were describing, Erica, that had happened in your neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay, so what do we have here? We have the message that says they knew an alien.
They knew an alien. They knew an alien. They knew an alien.
And I created this sort of little contrasty little clip here at the end.
The sheriff promised me that it wouldn't any news media know anything about it, that they knew an alien.
So they knew an alien is embedded in that part of the clip. To know an alien, to have contact, it's like this. The inner witness is stepping forwards, to lay claim, to self-select, to raise their hand and swear an oath in an involuntary way. It appears to me as an investigator that this is occurring. It suggests to me that this library of existing recorded testimony of the witnesses, we could go back to like Long John Neville radio broadcasts. There's plenty of archival material, that's like the 1950s, plenty of archival material available, testimony of witnesses of all sorts. And we could apply the same methodology, and we could seek further answers. And with the living witnesses, we could engage them in questions related to the findings, and to say, what does it mean when I hear you say this? Does that mean something to you? Well, inevitably, there's going to be people who have more to say. That in fact, being encounters with this information will provoke recall that may have otherwise been inaccessible for them. And this is what I find in my clinical practice, which you've mentioned my news site, newsinsight.com, but my clinical site is yourinnervoice.com, where people come for my private sessions. And they say that in our conversation, that the memory is stirred, and the facts that had eluded them become present again. And so I anticipate that just like with the forensic precision with which I identified BTK killer, with which I ID'd the accomplice of Anna Chapman, with which I reported the shotgun strikes of Iraq 2 years before they happened, I believe it will translate here into these cases as well. I believe that the findings there will be significant outcomes to this type of study. So I brought so many famous cases with me, but I wanted to also share that I've been collecting testimonies through my private UFO hotline that I use, my toll-free number, which is 1-888-453-0751. And the public over time has responded to me with their own stories. And they call in and leave voicemail for me, and I study that. And I think it's a really interesting, because it gives me a little bit of a reading on the public, and these are unknown cases generally. So I was looking across which of the ones, I thought this is a very interesting message. This is a witness in Massachusetts. So why don't we listen to their testimony here?
I don't know if that was a satellite, but it seemed like the light seemed to go out as it cruised across the sky. It got dimmer and dimmer, and then you couldn't see it anymore. Like maybe the reflection of the sun was off of it again, or maybe it just shut its lights out or turned down its power or whatever. I don't know. I can't tell you what it was. I tried to get my telescope out quick enough, but I couldn't. Anyway, just keep looking up, because I see. If you haven't seen anything yourself, you need to just keep looking up, because you'll see it. I mean, since I was a little kid, I've been seeing things in the sky.
There you go, the undying optimist. He's telling us, participate.
I love that. That's
you'll
great.
have an experience. Yeah, it's very nice to hear from the public, and they're sharing. And so this gentleman had a message that said, "The way they teach us."
Right, they teach us. Right, they teach us. Right, they teach us.
I think there's something going on here. I think this gentleman is talking to us about a lifetime of experience of interdimensional learning and other types of facilities that are cultivated through contact. I think that's what he's saying to us. And I think it's involuntary. It's like listening to that sleep talker sharing things they may never say aloud. I'm breaking the wall of silence and self-censorship by going in and delving in this further fashion. I'm using an acoustic scalpel to lift up the different layers of obscurity and denial. The different intimidators that inhibit free communications around these topics. The unconscious cannot be denied, and the truth comes out one way or the other, and this appears to be one of those ways. And as I said, I've over the years invited the public to call in. That's just one of my callers. And I've shared with you some high-profile, well-known cases, and I've shown game-changing, narrative-changing insights that in the future may gain further conversation. I don't find that in general, to be blunt, the general ufological community has not embraced this work, or they are not standing in line to bring this to bear. But I say it's evident to anyone who sees this procedure at work that further inroads and insights are going to come through this type of innovation. And Dr.
Yes,
Hynek,
I agree.
the father of ufology, said innovation is a hallmark of science.
And I think that is so important. And I'm not sure if the mainstream community, I think there needs to be a big change. And I think that this is excellent, and we need to think outside the box, and you're doing that. And we need to just do everything that you're doing. I mean, I'm always so impressed with your beautiful videos, with what you do, taking the chances and doing your research and getting out there and having the courage to do that.
Well, it's just, I am fortunate that I was given, through grace and, the permission of many profound people, I was given opportunity after opportunity, and I just capitalized on it. I ran the race as hard and as fast as I could to accomplish, within my limits, whatever I could do, whatever contributions I could make, because I believe in the educational opportunity. I believe in the human spirit. And I think that this UFO journey is connected to the journey of the spirit. I think there are bigger picture issues at play. At a minimum, one of them being that we're sharing this space. We're sharing this space with a whole bunch of other beings, and we have duties and responsibilities to our neighbors, not just to ourselves, but we have shared duties and responsibilities. And when we learn to be a part of the larger community, then our insight and understanding will only grow. So as I say, we live in a transitional time when these ideas are awakening within the minds of perceptive individuals, and there are community level alerts, and there are media initiatives like your show that are pushing this issue to the forefront. And through awareness of these issues, I think more great data, information, and insight is going to come from the public. I'm a great believer in the power of the grassroots and the power of the individual. And so my hope is simply that I am reaching, to people who were like I was, Jon Kelly, the young reader, Jon Kelly, the young viewer. I hope I'm reaching people like that so that they can sooner bring their resources to bear on questions and help the rest of us, to move forwards to, all the things that I will not achieve through my research. I hope that.
Oh, you will.
That does make it happen.
And you really, I can't say what you've done for me, personally. And I just hope that everyone takes a moment to go to Jon's YouTube channel to look at the beautiful videos and to go to News Inside Out. Stay tuned. Find Jon Kelly. Thank you for being here, Jon. I'm Erica Lukes. Thanks to all my listeners for being here. Next week, Alejandro Rojas. And stick around because on restricted airspace, the Spectre Ghost Seekers are going to be on the show. And then on hyperspace, Steve Colbert is talking about alien implants. Have a safe night and a happy Fantopia Friday. I'll see you next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.